Hi, this is Alessio. Hope you're well. Bitcoin this week temporarily dropped below a key level of support. As you can see here on Monday, Bitcoin temporarily broke the September lows just below the $40,000 level here, as you can see, but only to recover and bounce back above it again, which is quite interesting. So what could this potentially mean? And let's look at the chart on the weekly time frame as well, this weekly chart. And what does this potentially tell us as well? Join me. All right, guys, welcome back. And by the way, very happy new year to you as well. So before I discuss what's happening here likely on this chart, on the daily time frame chart of Bitcoin, let's first of all go on the higher time frame chart on the weekly time frame, which is quite important to actually appreciate. You may remember in my video about a few weeks ago, actually it was back in December, I actually mentioned something important here. You may remember that in December, I said, look, the fact that Bitcoin is spending so much time below the weekly 21 EMA here, that's a warning sign. It is a sign of weakness. In fact, let me play for you the clip and we'll come back.
I have to be honest, I'm quite surprised that Bitcoin has not managed yet to recover and get back above the 21 weekly EMA. It's been now 3 weeks. I mean, listen, I know you're probably thinking, well, so what? What does it matter? Well, it matters because if you look at previous bull market trends in Bitcoin, actually in most markets, not just Bitcoin, but also the stock markets, in a healthy uptrend, in a healthy bull market, when the price drops below the weekly 21 EMA, it manages to quickly recover and get back above it very soon, usually within a week or two, but not this long, okay? In fact, if you look at the previous trends in Bitcoin, for example, the bullish uptrend from 2015 to 2017, and even in previous uptrends in Bitcoin, the price of Bitcoin didn't stay too long below the 21 weekly average in a healthy uptrend continuation. So what I'm saying is when the price of Bitcoin pulls back the 21 weekly EMA, as you can see here on the chart, it usually manages to recover, bounce back quite quickly. Even when Bitcoin fell directly below the 21 weekly average, it did manage to recover very quickly and go back above it, usually within a week or a weekly bar, for example. It didn't stay too long below that level. And that is a concern now because you will note that Bitcoin now has been below the 21 weekly average now for how long? 3 weeks now. I gotta be honest with you guys, from experience and looking at this statistically and historically, this is not a good sign for Bitcoin. It's not a sign of strength for Bitcoin. So in a strong bullish market, Bitcoin would have recovered by now and would have closed back above the 21 weekly EMA by now. This is actually a sign of weakness in my view. The fact that Bitcoin has not managed yet to get above resistance, get above the 21 weekly EMA.
All right, guys, welcome back. And as you heard me say in that video from 20th of December, the fact that Bitcoin was spending so much time below the 21 weekly EMA here, the fact that Bitcoin was lingering so long below the 21 weekly EMA was not a positive sign. It was actually a negative sign. It was a sign of weakness for Bitcoin. By the way, weakness does not mean that Bitcoin is going to crash and drop into a bear market. It does not mean that. Weakness can also mean that the correction is probably not yet finished. And by the way, we were right about that. So notice how long Bitcoin spent below the weekly 21 EMA, more than 2 weeks. And by the way, guys, here's something I've learned, which is that the majority of analysts out there, the majority of analysts on Bitcoin, especially those on YouTube, seem to ignore the time element when it comes to price analysis. So it seems to me that the majority of analysts out there only focus on the price action, but they ignore the time element, the time axis. Okay, and that's really important. We must not ignore the time element. So that's why I said the fact that Bitcoin was spending so much time lingering and remaining below the 21 weekly EMA. And again, notice at no point did Bitcoin manage to get above and close above the weekly 21 EMA. It continued to remain below it, and as a matter of fact, it got rejected from the 21 weekly EMA right about here, which was also a negative sign. So this is an important lesson we have to remember, that statistically, whenever Bitcoin or price remains more than 1 week, or let's say at least more than 2 weeks, below the 21 weekly EMA, it's a sign of weakness. It's a negative sign. So it's potentially a warning. And again, weakness does not necessarily mean that Bitcoin is going to drop into a bear market or going to crash. No, it does not mean that. Weakness just means that the correction probably has not finished yet. And we were right about that. Notice that Bitcoin continued to drop lower. And as a matter of fact, it took out the December lows and temporarily dropped below the September lows as well. Now, of course, Bitcoin has managed to recover from the September lows from that point at the moment. By the way, some of you said to me, well, what about what happened back in May, in April, May? Well, as a matter of fact, what happened in April, May supports this view as well. Let me just say this. When you're looking at statistics, whenever we look at statistics, we're not just looking at 1 month or one data point. We're looking at all the data points. That's why I said that statistically, when Bitcoin is in an uptrend and when it pulls back to the 21 EMA, statistically speaking, it usually recovers quite quickly. But when Bitcoin does this, when Bitcoin falls below the 21 weekly EMA and then spends a lot of time below it, as it did back in the month of May, that's not a positive sign. That is not a sign of strength. It's a sign of weakness. As you can see here, Bitcoin did the exact same thing back in the month of May and June. It dropped below 30K. It took out the lows that it made in May, and temporarily it dropped below the $30,000 level, which scared a lot of people back then. So we saw something quite similar to this very recently here as well in the month of December, which you can see again, weakness resulted in a bit more downside action here in Bitcoin. So here's what I would say about this. Notice on the daily time frame chart that we retested, as we can see here, we came to retest that low at the just below the $40,000 level. So we took out that level just below 40K temporarily. I think Bitcoin just fell temporarily a few points below the September lows, depending on which chart of Bitcoin you're looking at. But as you can see here, Bitcoin just temporarily took out by a few points the September lows, and then it quickly bounced back and recovered above it here, which says to me it might be a false breakout, a false break of support. And as you know from technical analysis, a false break of support, of key support, usually tends to be a positive sign. Now, it's a bit too soon. Let's see what happens in the next couple of weeks. But the bottom line is the fact that Bitcoin managed to recover quite quickly from this near $40,000 level here, from the 40K or just below the 40K level here. The fact that Bitcoin managed to recover very quickly and bounce back very quickly from this level can be a positive sign. But also it means this. It means that this level, this key support level you're seeing here, is going to be very important for Bitcoin to protect. So if Bitcoin bulls are going to succeed and push Bitcoin back into an uptrend, this level needs to be protected. So Bitcoin needs to remain above this level of support, just near 40K. Let me just zoom out a little bit here so we can see this. So this level of support needs to hold on Bitcoin just near 40K if Bitcoin is going to avoid going into a bear market. Because let me say this point very clearly. If Bitcoin were to take out and fall below this recent low that it made here, again, the low that it made this month in January and the lows that it made in September, if Bitcoin were to drop below the support, then it actually could push Bitcoin into a bear market. And again, I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm not saying that's actually what's going to happen. What I'm saying is that if Bitcoin were to make a sustained move or decline below that support near 40K, that very important support level, which is the September lows and the January lows here, that actually could push Bitcoin into a potential bear market. Why? Because it's breaking market structure. You see, this level here is now market structure. It's a key level of support. That means if price were to break market structure, that's an if, by the way, but if Bitcoin were to break this key structural level of support just near 40K, that is breaking support on not just the daily time frame, but also on the weekly time frame. You can see on the weekly time frame, that is also a key level of support just near 40K, near the September lows. So guys, as I'm sure you know by now, a key definition of a bear market is when price breaks structure on not just one time frame, but at least two time frames, the daily and the weekly. So this level here near 40K is a key level of support and structure on the weekly time frame. So on the weekly and on the daily. Okay, so on the daily time frame, it is also a key level of support. Okay, I'll mark that as well on my chart. So it's going to be very important for bulls to protect that level of support near 40K if Bitcoin is going to avoid dropping into a bear market. Now, I have to tell you that personally, on a gut feeling basis, and just a gut feeling, and when I say gut feeling, I mean based on experience and what I'm seeing here on the chart, from a purely gut feeling perspective, I actually remain cautiously optimistic on Bitcoin. I actually don't think Bitcoin is going to drop into a bear market. But if I'm wrong about that, then we'll know if Bitcoin were to drop and make a sustained move below that support level near 40K. But again, personally, I think on a gut feeling basis, I remain cautiously optimistic on Bitcoin. However, what Bitcoin needs to do, if Bitcoin is going to persuade us and prove to us that it's going to move back into an uptrend, what it has to do is first protect this level. So Bitcoin bulls must protect this key level of support just near 40K. And Bitcoin has to persuade us by breaking and closing above that weekly 21 EMA, which, by the way, it has not managed to do this in the last several weeks, especially going into December. So if Bitcoin can finally break that key level of resistance near the weekly 21 EMA and close above it, then the probabilities would increase that Bitcoin is going to move back into an uptrend continuation and that the bull market would likely continue as well. So that's what we have to patiently wait for and see in the next few weeks. All right, guys, let me just say this. In the most recent member video, I've covered the likely Elliott wave counts, the potential projections, and the most likely targets we have for Bitcoin for this year in 2022. So I've covered in a lot of detail in the most recent member video and update. So you can go ahead and watch that. And if you're not a member, you can join in that link you see right there. Thank you very much indeed. Bye for now.